Jan Broberg is an actress and a singer. She was also a kidnap victim, in which also kidnapped at a very young age, not once but twice, which is how her case managed to make it on to the TCL podcast. Welcome back to the True Crime Lounge podcast, where we talk here on Spotify and YouTube. I also have a Patreon that you can join as well. And for any updates on my podcast and channel, you can find me on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. I also have a merch shop that you can check out for all your true crime gear. Sorry guys, I'm doxing my roommates right now, and they're cracking me up right now. But with that being said, let's dive into today's episode here on the TCL podcast. Okay, so today's going to be a TCL special, which will appear on both my channel and my podcast. I chose to do this case just because I needed to take a break from murder cases for a minute. I'm currently working on season 4, which talks about murder. Literally all episodes talk about murder. But I like it. Don't get me wrong. I just want to break it. I just want to have something that cover a case that has a happy ending. Um, but having a child abducted is one of the worst fears in the world that could happen to any parent. I'm an aunt, but I will fight tooth and nail for my niece and nephew if anything ever happened to them. Um, Most people know about kidnapping cases that happen once to children. What about cases that happen twice? Well, in the case of Jane Broberg's abduction, after being made into a Netflix original documentary called Abducted in Plain Sight. Here's my thing about that title, though. I actually watched it last night, so really good. But there's already a Lifetime movie called Abducted in Plain Sight where it talks about the Anne Sluty case, which I do eventually plan on covering. Just which with me being in school right now is hard to do, but it's hard to do both. So I do it in my free time. Currently, I'm on spring break, so I have a little bit more free time, and I didn't really want to do any schoolwork over the break. But the case of Jane Brower has captivated a fresh set of true crime lovers. Now, she was only 12 when she was abducted in 1974 by Robert B. Berchtold. He was a close family friend and neighbor, and from what we know, he doted on Jan more than any of her siblings, which was not surprising. Which was not why her parents didn't suspect anything when he wanted to take her horseback riding. His parents became concerned about after a few days. Her parents became concerned after a few days when he did not return her, and her parents will file a missing persons report in a nationwide investigation will launch for Jan and B by the FBI. There has been a present-day fascination with the case that comes with some details that I will go into a little bit later. Right now, I want to summarize before most of y'all click out. But yeah, Berchtold was able to convince Jan that they had been abducted by UFOs, and convinced. I'll be back, guys. He also convinced her that it was their mission as humans to procreate in the best interest of the human race. Net before she turned 16. The FBI would finally locate her in Bertrand in Mexico, but not before he married her at the age of 12. Now, I really don't know what Mexican law is when it comes to child marriages, and I don't want to know. Because I know the guy, the guy, okay, this guy is sad. This is a, and this is a sad issue that happens. I do not believe in child marriages. I will go ahead and clarify. There are a few states there are a few states where they have literally no age limit when it comes to child marriages. I actually did a video, I think, covering that. But yeah. So what happens next is very shocking. The family would let him back into her life after serving a 45-day sentence that was reduced to 10 days for kidnapping. Yet they didn't charge him for rape. So in 1976, just 2 years later, he would kidnap her again. This time, a trail would be left and there would be a law enforcement. Sorry, guys. Anyway, and caused law enforcement to realize she ran away on her own time, on her accord. He could pose as her father. He would pose as her father and send her to an all-girls Catholic school, while maintaining contact with the parents to cover his tracks. The FBI would tap his phone, and 3 months later, through Broberg's phone lines, they were able to locate and apprehend Berchtold while recovering Jan safely. If you are still here, let me dive into a few details. Um, so the Berchtolds have been and the Brobergs have been family, friends, and neighbors for a long time. B didn't didn't kidnap her once but twice. The fact the first time he didn't get put on sex offender registry baffles me really. But B would use her parents' religious beliefs to form a web of trust, shame, and complicity in order for them to for the kidnapping drop the kidnapping charges. He would also continue to let him spend a strange amount and disturbing amount of time with their young daughter. Here comes the most unshocking twist of all for me. He would eventually kidnap her a second time. Now, Jan's kidnapping took place in a small town long before the internet and true crime became a fascination. Now, and her family's faith was LDS, and according to Jan, this documentary was the first time that the father confessed to having his own romantic entanglement with his daughter's kidnapper. Jan would also write in a memoir with her mom, Mary Ann, called Stolen Innocence, which is how Bergman, Ber- Broberg, first learned of the kidnapping. The first edition of the book left several details out, such as the affairs both, not one, but both parents had with Birch told. During the preliminary discussions with the filmmakers in the documentary, she was pretty forthcoming about the affair her mother had with him. But the filmmaker didn't know about Bob's indiscretion until she got a hold of the FBI documents and court transcripts. Her dad, Bob, would give details in the fact that both Mary Ann and him were so consumed with their own actions and trauma that they just didn't pay attention for their daughter's relationship with him, what Birch told. The way they were supposed to. And Birchtold allegedly used his convoluted alien abduction grooming narrative on multiple victims. One jaw-dropping twist that occurs during the first kidnapping, when Jan said that he used a cassette player to trick her, just 12 years old at the time, into believing that she had been kidnapped by aliens, and that she could save her family only if she accepted a secret mission to procreate with Birchtold. During Vanity Fair's conversation with Broberg, a filmmaker would confess that she initially had a hard time believing this element of Jane's story. And she will even go on to say, I constantly get questioned about this a lot. If this little box was next to me and it was aliens' voices really playing, I got to I got to one point where I was like, well, maybe it doesn't matter if it's real. Maybe this is what Jan had told herself to cope with the situation to get through it. Which we all have our ways of coping with something in our life. It does not matter what it is. Um, sorry y'all, my phone is being really stupid right now, and I don't know why. I'm waiting on a grocery order to get here too, so. But yeah. But then, when they were working on the film, um, one of Burchell's other alleged victims reached out and told a story about how he used the alien psychology, saying, "You're a princess from a different planet." And he used a whole alien story. When the moment for her where she thought, "Oh my gosh, it's real," he did it. Now, asked how Burchell could come up with this extravagant deception plan, Jan said that her only theory was that inspiration struck from a 70s theatress. Which the whole idea of a science fiction film was so popular and tape recorders had just come out that there were a lot of newspaper articles about UFOs, whether or not they were real. Now, even though Bertrand's brother Joe was aware of his brother's inappropriate behavior, he felt the need to participate in this um, documentary. So he saw the behavior, and he participated. Now, Berchtold did commit suicide in 2005 after coming face to face with Jane in a courtroom. In a bizarre meeting in the documentary that I discovered was that he was not able to defend himself. And now his brother Jose felt the need to participate in this film and say, I don't know that he trusted us completely and that he wanted to give his brother a voice. It's something that he thinks about a lot, and that sibling love and how strong it is. I think that comes to a lot with Joe. Now, some crazy details were left in the cutting room floor. For example, to streamline the documentary, it ended up having to take several story elements, including a meetup that Mary had with Berchtold in a parking lot, allegedly involving a gun and Marianne's brother. Also, there was a consultant with forensic psychologist providing her with the court transcripts and other evidence of Berchtold's fixation with Jan to help get her help. She also explained how much of her work hmm, how much work it takes to actually kidnap somebody. That is why it happens more often because hang on one second. Okay, where was I? Okay. But yeah, but she is hopeful that one day she could make a sequel to this documentary, and I hope she does, because like just to follow up to see how where everybody is, because I found the documentary really interesting. But after her trauma, she will go on to get married, have a son, and get divorced. Um, Now this relationship with Burchell had lasting effects on her. She was just a kid when he kidnapped her and manipulated her, for crying out loud. But yeah, but she would say she's never felt as in love with any other man that she's been in a relationship with than she felt with Burchell. And I think at that young age, if you're able to manipulate a child like that, something is obviously sick and wrong with you right there. Um, and this also speaks huge values to how impressionable children are. 12-year-olds especially. To this day, Jan struggles with how to love and how not to associate that love that she felt for Burchell when she was 12 and 13. Bob and Marianne stayed married until Bob's death in 2013. In spite of the trauma of the kidnapping and the separate indiscretions, um, the husband and wife had it with their daughter, but Bob and Marianne stayed married until Bob died. And asked whether Bob's affair with Burchell continued beyond the car incident, she says she isn't sure. Now, We certainly couldn't find any indication that it continued, and it had been a question people have asked. And I'm not sure if it matters or if there was or if there wasn't, because there was only one indiscretion, and that only gave Rochelle ammunition he needed to blackmail the head of the household. One time or one time or more than that, he the deed was done, and he only did that so he could get close to Jan. That's the sad part right there. Um, now Jan has gone on to a successful acting career, appearing in 45 films um, and television projects. She still auditions, but she still remembers the theater company in Utah, and it has been super wonderful for her. I wonder if there's any movies like I've seen her in that I just don't realize I've seen her in it. I'm going to have to go back and see if there's some I have. However, it has been hard for Jan and her siblings to see her parents criticized their response to the documentary. After this film premiered, however, Jan and Bob approached the filmmaker with a genuine appreciation. Yeah. And I think that's gonna be hard though. Like the parents at the time, you got to think it was a different decade. They were more concerned with covering their trail. They were members of the LDS, the Mormon faith. Um, so they came from a small town. But now in the internet age, the they wanted to make audience aware of how people end their lives and how to protect children a little bit more, getting the word out, and um it could happen to somebody like you, somebody close to you, by somebody you know, and not to trust anybody. But yeah, but her case had a happy ending. She was alive. She turned herself into a public speaker as well and did several book tours where he would stalk her, and she had to go to court, and he committed suicide. But yeah, all right, that's it for today's episode. I will see y'all next time. Y'all have a great